Okay.
This meeting is being recorded.
Thank you very much, everyone, for coming again. My name is Sohaila Bana. I'm the chair of West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council. We are very concerned about emergency preparedness for the community, and we are proposing having talking sirens, especially after the city of Berkeley installed them, and they seem to have cost only $2 million for them. And we heard there may be grants available for 3/4 of the cost. So we would like to start the discussion, study the feasibility and come up with a specific proposal. And I'm very glad that we have the support of Tony Semenza with CAER. I'm going to ask Tony to introduce himself first, and then we go around. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Tony Semenza from CAER. You're looking for introductions, right?
Yes. Do you want to just briefly say what CAER is? I think everybody knows what this deal.
Do they know? It's Community Awareness Emergency Response Organization.
Thank you very much. Julie?
My name is Julie Cavalier. I'm the Community Warning System Manager for Contra Costa County, Office of the Sheriff.
Thank you very much. We'll try to ask you to write in chat from now on if needed. Katie? Please.
Hello, I'm Katie Hahn. I'm with Blackberry AtHoc, and I support Julie and team around their crisis communication for CWS.
Thank you. Tom, please. I'll just go in the order I see you on my computer.
Lieutenant Tom Rothrick with the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you very much. Rocky? You're muted, Rocky. Unmute, please.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Rocky Saunders. I'm a resident of Richmond and a participant in the West Contra Costa County Fire Safe Council.
Thank you. James?
Hi, y'all. My name is James Duff. I am the Outreach and Education Coordinator for the City of Orinda. I was about to say my old job title, which was Fire Adapted Communities Coordinator for the City of Austin, Texas, and their fire department. I don't work there anymore. Yeah.
Thank you. Dan, please.
Hi, my name is Dan Levy. I'm with Blackberry AtHoc. I have been an engineer involved with the community warning system for the last 20 plus years. And I'm here to support Julie from a technical perspective. I also want to point out that I am a resident of Pleasant Hill, California, and my office is in Martinez, California, where it's been for the last 20 odd years.
Would you like to please educate us about Blackberry AtHoc? I see you and Katie work there. What is it?
So Blackberry AtHoc is the vendor of record for the Contra Costa Community Warning System. We manage all of the technical aspects of communication between Julie and the community through a variety of different modalities, which include the community warning system sirens that are around the neighborhoods that have refineries and chemical plants, and also all of the other notification tools that are used to send out text messages, WIA, iPause, and the list goes on and on. Facebook, Google Maps. Am I missing any, Julie? I don't want to make you talk too much, but there are a variety of tools. There's an entire suite of tools that can be used for communication for, for the county. We also work with a number of other municipalities throughout the United States and elsewhere on similar systems. So, but as I mentioned, I've been long-term on this and worked with Tony Semenza for many, many years on how CAER interacts with the system and with the community warning system on what their desires and needs are for technical advancement through the decades.
So my impression from the name was that it's for BlackBerry phone only. It's not.
No,
thought
BlackBerry
it
is the corporate company that currently, so AtHoc is the name of the tool. We're a software company primarily that produce all of these various products, and BlackBerry is the corporate owner of the AtHoc product, and proudly display the BlackBerry name on the outside of my office here in Martinez.
Got it. So I thought it was AtHoc, misspelled AtHoc. So thank you very much for explaining that. So that's the name of the software you're using. And I assume your office was in charge of coordinating the national message that went out about a couple of months ago or a month ago.
No,
That
no,
was FEMA.
Oh, so FEMA sent it on their own without your help?
No, that's IPOS. It's part of our entire network. They're all connected.
Yeah, but you helped them, I assume, in this region, right? No? Okay, maybe we can continue that discussion at a different point because it's very confusing how things work. But if there's time at the end of the meeting, it'd be nice to learn about
Dan,
different warning
Maybe
systems.
Dan can explain.
well, I think I'm going to stick with Ms. Banna's recommendation that we hold that conversation until later. Let's finish the introductions here.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McCoy, I don't see your first name. Could you go ahead? And I don't know your title, excuse my ignorance. I assume you're a lieutenant. Go ahead.
Captain Airport Board Emergency Services Division.
Okay, thank you very much. Rebecca?
Yes, Rebecca Arona, Treasurer for the West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Fire Chief Smith.
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. My name is Michael E. Smith. I'm the interim fire chief for the city of Richmond.
Thanks. Joe?
Hi, Joe Grappolo, ex-battalion chief, Ulcerative Fire, and representative of Genesis as a trainer for public safety.
Thank you. Rick, please.
Yeah, good morning. Rick Kovar, Contra Costa County OES manager. Just here to support Julie and the team.
Thank you very much. I see another Tony. Could you introduce yourself? Tony, is that you with two devices or is it a different Tony?
That's me. I'm double.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Crowler.
Yeah, it's Chris Roller. Sorry. So I work with Joe from Genesis. So I'm here to help support Joe on the call. He invited me. Thank you.
Thank you. Marilyn, please.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Sarney, West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council Vice Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So we need to discuss talking sirens, but before we get there now, after Dan explained about that, Dan, could you explain all the public warning systems we have, including the one that FEMA use, how it's separate, how things work, so we learn what's in place and what role talking sirens could play?
So to start off with, the test that was run a couple months ago was actually, I believe, from the Office of the President of the United States of America. That was a drill down effect to prove end-to-end notification from the president out to all population of the United States. So whereas some of those tools cross over into what the county uses to notify people in the case of senior alerts or silver alerts, amber alerts, road closures, refinery releases, it's an all hazards warning system here in the community warning system. And so they use it for just about anything that you can picture. That can be a levee break or breach or flood or any kind of hazard, right? And that's what they use it for. Although it was primarily initially funded, out of the release from various refineries in the late 80s and early 90s, it has gone to being a full all hazards warning system at this point. So to speak about how the system technically works at the moment, and I'm going to degrade this into the sirens are only used currently if there is a shelter in place emergency. Okay. That is the current usage of the existing sirens throughout Contra Costa County. They are strategically placed in locations of transportation emergencies and other potential hazardous material emergencies around the refineries. And that was primarily funded because of that. Some of the logic that was used to produce the system that is today, and even back then, was that the populace in the areas of Richmond and other major cities are not solely English-speaking populations. They are multilingual populations, and the decision was made, and public address sirens were available at that time as well. So it was not an easily, it was not technology being dismissed because of technology. It was technology that was being dismissed because of needing to overcome certain challenges of notifying people in multiple languages simultaneously. So the protocol that was done at the time was to set up that if there was a shelter-in-place emergency that was triggered by some hazmat event throughout the county, the sirens would sound for 8 minutes as a turbine sound. They are motor turbines in most cases. There are some sirens that have been refreshed for technology, just because getting a turbine siren anymore is a non-starter. You're pretty much putting in public address sirens wherever one fails or is otherwise taken out of service. And the sound that's generated by the public address style sirens today is still a simulated turbine sound. Now, in conjunction with that, CAER sends out notification in the form of leaflets in utility bills and such from time to time to all of the members of community in multiple languages, so that people are educated as to, if you hear these sirens, these are the actions you need to take, which are specifically to go indoors, seal all your windows and doors, turn off any kind of external fans that are drawing air that could be hazardous into your home, turn on TV and radio, tune into the internet, look at your phone for additional warnings that tell you why the sirens are going off. And that gets you the information in the language that you need to understand what is actually going on in the community. Bear in mind that sirens, whether they be voice or whether they be turbine style, are meant to warn people who are outside. People who are inside are going to get those notifications through other methods. They're going to get it on their phone. Maybe they'll see it on their computer. Maybe they'll see it, on their cable TV. Whatever the case may be, those sirens are really not intended to overcome whatever kind of ambient noise might be outside and the muffling effects of being inside a home or a business or what have you. There are other tools that are meant to be used for that. So when it comes to voice announcements outside, it has been discussed over the last quite some time between CWS and CAER and the various engineers who have worked on the system, that the idea of using voice to notify people of something specific is very difficult for many different reasons. Whether that's the language barrier that needs to be overcome, whether that's the muffling effect of being indoors versus outdoors. You need to hear something loud and clear, a unified signal, regardless of what your environment is, that you can identify as being something that you need to take action to. Okay, so those are kind of the generics of one versus the other. Now, I'm not going to say that you shouldn't put in a voice system. I just think that you should, I generally think that a voice-driven system can be complemented by having tones that system can also generate, which will be purer tones that have better penetration, through trees, through whatever, and get through that barrier, that language barrier as well, with educational materials, right? So that's the general MO there. Our tools are used, the variety of tools that the AtHoc suite include are being able to drill down to text messages, we have an app that people can download that can get alerting through that method. We have WIA and iPause that is used for interagency communication. The WIA drills down onto cell phones, that it's not vendor dependent. It's just through an area. It's not by number. We can call landlines. We can call all sorts of other functionality Lots and lots of different tools. The more tools you have, the more you're going to get that information across.
Thank you very much. I have two quick questions,
Okay.
and I wonder if others have questions. My number one question, FEMA just reached out through cell phones. That's why they bypassed you and didn't. And the second one, do we have an estimate of the delay time? The time they issued the order until I receive it?
So when you're talking about FEMA, they didn't bypass us per se. They're using the same tools, but they're using them directly. It's not when the federal government sends out an emergency notification, and this is true of any other organization, they have a higher authority to send that information out, right? And it's in parallel. It's not used for the same functionality at all. I don't think you'd ever see a FEMA alert for a localized fire per se. That's kind of my expectations there. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of your question there?
The delay time.
The delay time. Well, that all depends on the technology. Some of it is almost instantaneous, and some of it may take a few minutes to drill out. And those limitations can be based on any kind of bottleneck that's in the third-party technologies.
I see. Thank you. And from Julie's note, I understand that CWS is the alerting authority in Contra Costa for FEMA, right? Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Dan before we move on?
Let me give some updates if I can, Johila.
Sure.
Because I've been here a little longer than Dan's been here in this process. When we built the warning system, we built it, we didn't build it in a vacuum. We talked to subject matter experts about alerting and notification when we were building it. When we built it, we wanted it to be an all-risk system. We developed a 50-page report talking about the fact that the committee that worked on it wanted it to be an all-risk system. At that time, the Board of Supervisors and the Hazardous Material Commission and County Health Services wanted to have it function only as a warning system for shelter in place for hazardous material releases. When we turned it over to County Hazmat, it stayed there for a few years, and then it was given to the Office of the Sheriff, where it became an all-risk system. So that was the vision that we initially had. When I joined the West Contra Costa Fire Safety Council, I did so because I wanted to try and understand what the problems were in the area where we have urban wildland interface, and whether or not the current tools that the warning system are sufficient enough to provide messages for those people that may be in that interface, because that's what we're trying to solve. So my role here is to I'm glad that Dan's on the call and Julie's on the call and everybody else is here, because one of the things I wanted to make sure everybody understand was what tools are currently available to provide information to people so that they can, if they had to, leave an area, evacuate an area, shelter in place, whatever. So I think that it's important that we understand what the tools are, and we try and determine if there are any gaps in that area, and then look at other tools, if other tools are available to close those gaps. So, that's been CAER's role in this whole process. That's been my role in joining Shahila and the group at the West Contra Costa Fire Safety Council. I'm happy to be on that team, but I want to make sure everybody understands what current tools are available and whether or not we have enough tools to do the job we're talking about. So Dan or whoever else wants to ask questions, the more questions we have, the better it is.
Thank you, Tony. I have a couple of questions for Dan. One of them is, if there is no power, can the sirens be used? Assume there's an earthquake and the power is down.
Yes, all of the sirens in the current system are radio controlled, battery backed up. We have a redundant system that has backup paths of communication. And so, they should be fairly impervious to an earthquake during the lifetime of the batteries that are in the sirens. They're generally spec'd to be at least 72 hours of standby power, based on the batteries that we have in all of the systems.
Also, all of the sirens are regularly checked and maintained. So they are, the battery packs are always checked. They're on a schedule of being serviced and maintained regularly, and those reports are shared with Julie and team.
Yeah, and to add to what Katie's saying, we actually perform that telemetry monitoring and maintenance. Besides having a preventive maintenance program that we monitor and replace parts on a schedule, we also do monitor it, and have immediate feedback to any faults that are within the system that we can take immediate response on fixing them.
Thank you. So for your information, in our area, which is also Bronte Valley, and in the last incident by Martinez, Bay Area Air District said that it was actually impacted by the incident. We do not have a siren. And for the past 3-4 years, we've been asking the city of Richmond and the county, I don't know if it went to the county or not, but we've been in communication with our city to add a different tone for escaping for wildfires. And they say, no, it's going to be confusing to the people. But what happened in Hawaii makes it very clear that we do need a system to inform people, to alert people. That's why I think FEMA initiated that, to make sure, the people are being concerned about alerting the public now. And many cities are now employing talking sirens. And the question is, what are the options now? It's wildfires are of major concern. So what do you suggest, in your view? Can we add a different tone to the existing sirens, more sirens in different locations? What should we do?
Julie, just to save your voice,
Yes.
I'll speak on your behalf. I think that the general MO of the community warning system, and something that I believe in as well, is to have a singular unified tone that addresses so let's take this back. So first off, in the case of red flag warnings and things like that, right? You typically have warnings in advance that say that you're going to experience a red flag event. Maybe it's going to impact your area. Maybe you need to pack a to-go bag. These are all educational things that you're getting through, releases from the CWS, releases from the National Weather Service, releases from the California Office of Emergency Services, that you are getting either through your cell phone or over television or over radio or what have you, right? These are all notifications that are coming externally about the risk, the potential, watch, if you will, for an event, right? When we get to the actual warning aspect, it's expected that people are going to be ready to evacuate. And the general MO is to notify people through their cell phones, through the radio, through the television, through whatever else, to tell them to evacuate. Worst case scenarios, the sheriff's department, the police department, police and fire agencies, they're out there with bullhorns in the streets, in the areas. That's the current MO, right? Now, again, that's not to say that that a voice siren, or even having a tone, in your area, having sirens that cover your area for those specific purposes, that's kind of a question as to, if you feel you need it, that's something that you need to have a deeper conversation with Julie about how we can support having it, right? So from a technical perspective, we can absolutely support it, right? But from a policy perspective, and this is something that Julie's spoken on, previously in the past, is it's desired to stay the single tone so that there can be one set of education. That set of education is go inside, listen to your television or whatever other method of specific information for your specific emergency in order to take further action. That is the expectation. So if you hear the sirens go off, you know, whether it's one tone or another tone, you're not, you know, when you're in a panic situation, when people are in a panic situation, the more complex you make an emergency warning system, a siren system, the less they're going to potentially, or the more likely it is that they're going to potentially follow bad advice. Okay.
But then that's, sorry for interruption, that's exactly what happened in Maui.
I don't think that's all of what happened in Maui. Maui had some technical failures that were beyond that, you know, such as their entire cellular network was disabled early in the emergency. So all of the tools that were dependent on their cellular infrastructure, which to the best of my knowledge included their evacuation sirens, their tsunami evacuation sirens, which were also linked to their cellular network, were disabled early in that event because of the fire.
But in this case, you know, you hear the siren tone, and then you go to the other modalities that are provided through the community warning system to get additional information. You check your cell phone, you check the TV, you check your email, and all of those messages are coming through instantaneously in time so that you can say, I hear this sound, I am now taking an action, I know I need to evacuate, or you know, listen to the radio, or turn on any of the modalities that are provided to get additional information on what to do. And one of the reasons the tones work very well is because there is no language barrier, and that education that CAER provides on with the pamphlets in all the different languages, so that people are informed once they hear that tone to take an action in their own language.
So if I understand Dan and Katie correctly, number one, technically it's possible to add a different tone. Number two, we could use the same tone for wildfire.
Yeah, go ahead, Julie. Did you want to add to that, or do you want?
Yeah, that's Julie.
So we're talking about capabilities, but also, forgive me, sorry guys. Think of a siren like what you're doing with conditioning. So you hear the sound, you take an action. Sirens are only as good as the conditioning that we put behind them with the public. So CAER, over the past 20 years, has educated the public on our 42 sirens being associated with sheltering in place and looking for more information. So you hear the siren, you go look for information and you shelter in place. So that being said, any change is also only as good as the conditioning we put behind it. So CAER has instilled in over 20 languages that you are to shelter in place when you hear a siren in our county. And so people take that associated action. That's over 20 years of continuous education. What you're looking at is not we put this thing out and it's going to save lives. It's not that. There has to be a massive amount of education that has nothing to do with necessarily cost. We've got sound studies and we've got other things that have to be done on the efficacy of any system. Our system that's in place has done those studies to make sure that we're effective, but we're always looking for opportunities to expand it and do better. But it's not as simple as the question you're asking. If that helps.
Yes, so the emphasizing massive education needed, I understand that, but sorry, it says my computer's gonna die. Let me make sure it's connected to, oh my God, hold on. Okay, it's connected now, sorry. Also, I wanna make sure a different tone is possible. Is that what you said, Dan? Adding a tone to the sirens?
From a technical well, so not to the existing sirens.
Okay.
You know, so the existing sirens, you know, they're basically motor turbines. They turn on and they turn off, and they make a very distinctive tone, and they're very pervasive in the amount of audio that can be generated so that people are going to hear that turbine tone if they're within the area that has been specified for notification, right? So, to speak to your earlier question or statement about Bay Area air quality, saying that your neighborhood had been impacted in some way or another as far as the air quality, I'm not, I don't know that to have been the case, but I don't think that the county would have activated the sirens unless that impact were of a certain amount, certain measurable amounts by the monitors and meters that Bay Area Air Quality and other agencies use to monitor that. So if it was of an amount that was of potential risk to people with certain skin respiratory conditions, that would have been classified as a level 2 emergency within the hazmat scope of things, and the sirens would not have been used for that case. But there would have been notifications sent out over TV and radio and cell phones and other modalities to advise people with those sensitivities to take an alternate action, right? Going indoors, whatever, washing any affected areas of their body, things of that nature, right? And if it didn't get to that point, then that's because the monitoring that was occurring at the time did not indicate that any kind of action was required on behalf of the community warning system.
I understand, but the point I was trying to emphasize on is that there is no siren in the vicinity in our area.
Right, but I guess the point, the counterpoint that I'm making to that is that even if there were, it would have taken a pretty major release to need to activate a siren in your area for that hazmat potential.
Yeah, understood, but we'd like to be ready if God
Sure.
forbid and such a thing happens.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
So in this, I'll open it up to whoever would be, when we talk about WIA and EAS, so the wireless alerts and then the emergency activation system, FEMA does set some pretty strict guidelines as to when those things are going to be used, imminent threat, and again, the tools being the wireless alert and the emergency alert, like that FEMA test. So FEMA sets these very good strict guidelines, that there's going to be imminent threat to life and property and those things. Now, when we talk about sirens, and again, whether it's Joe or Mr. Roller or Dan or Katie or whomever, or Tony Semenza for that matter, do those same standards apply to sirens, or are there guidelines set forth to when you can use sirens, how you can use them, when they can be alerted, and who can alert those sirens?
You may have lost Tony. I'm not seeing him on the meeting at the moment, but I do know that as far as FEMA guidelines are concerned, there are effectively 2 FEMA tones that are mostly adhered to by federal agencies, by other municipalities, and those are disaster tone and attack tone. And both are 3 to 5 minute tones. One is a steady 3 to 5 minute tone, and one is a so-called wavering 3 to 5 minute tone. Those are the standards set by FEMA. So that's, yeah.
Yeah. If I could add a little bit, since the way that the city of Berkeley is going to implement their system is, Dan is correct. If you have a mechanical tone only siren, you can't create voice. And so there are only 2 methods of activation, but the city of Berkeley, there's no restrictions on when to use the speakers, and they're actually integrating them with the university and also with Lawrence Labs, and then they're creating their own policy of when to use them and how to use them, and what the messages are for it. And there's multiple messages that they've created, some scripts. With those speakers, you can put as many scripts together, pre-recorded messages, or a live broadcast. It's up to the city on how they want to use that. And so there isn't any strict guideline on when they can, or they're not restricted from using them for anything. They could use it for a parade, a race. They could use it for anything that they want to. It's up to them to create the policy for it.
Who's creating that policy?
What was that?
I'm sorry, I guess my speaker's quiet. Thank you. Who's creating that policy? And maybe I'll just check with the challenge.
For the city of Berkeley, it's they have a committee that they're working with. So like Chief May, the emergency coordinators that are from each from the university and also from the lab. They're all sitting together and working on that. And you could probably talk to Chief May and get more details on how he's, scripting up the policy, but they're doing that. And Marin County is doing the same thing with the fire chiefs, also have their own scripts in the county.
Okay, sorry, and just for clarification, I was corrected. So when I'm talking about restrictions or guidelines, not FEMA, but the FCC. So there's no FCC restrictions on siren uses or anything like that. Okay.
No, there's no restriction.
So in terms of the authority, there, like, if you wanted to implement a similar thing, we wouldn't go through the county, or I don't understand.
No. So let me clarify. So with like the city of Berkeley is creating their own, and they have a collaboration with, like right now, they have an agreement with the university and the lab to do that. Alameda County may have something completely separate. Marin County is also working towards the same something similar. Right now, there's only a couple of cities that have installed the voice capable speakers, but they also have an alert, similar that Dan was talking about with that's an iPause generated solution that goes SMS and text. Marin County actually controls all of that. And Marin County has the capability to activate the speakers, and they have the capability to play whatever message they want. The city, Southern Marin and Mill Valley, and it'll be San Rafael and also Novato, will all have their own capability to activate their speakers in that in their jurisdiction. But the intent is, for a wildfire or for some type of emergency that they're going to use that for. And so hopefully that answers the question. And I don't know how it is. I mean, Julie probably has her own policy on how she wants to activate the system, but each county and city can have their own authority.
And when it comes to messaging, and you may not have the answer to this, and you may have to go to cities, but understanding that, like Dan mentioned, the importance of a unified message.
I'm sorry, your voice quality is not good. I don't know if it's just me or for everyone. So speak it slowly, please, so we can understand.
Okay. Do you know if there's coordinated messaging for Berkeley and Alameda County? Do you know if there's coordinated messaging that goes out between their CWS and the sirens, and it's the same message that goes out?
I don't know off the top of my head. I do know that the city of Berkeley, I mean, I can only talk for what I know so far, is the city of Berkeley, UC Berkeley, and the lab, Lawrence Labs, are all sending out the same message. Outside of that, I know that I don't know what the other city like Oakland is doing, for example, or some of the other cities on their notification system. But I do know that they're collaboratively working together in the surrounding areas of the city of Berkeley.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Chris? I have some questions, but I want to make sure if others have questions, they share. My questions are, number one, I assume massive education would be needed with the speaking sirens too, right?
I can say that Marin County and the city of Berkeley are created their own, like if you go to their website, they have information. So there's a campaign they're doing education through their social media, through different levels of communicating of what the speakers are. And I think it was September 17th at Live Oak Park in the city of Berkeley. They had a nice education event for all the public, and there was they turned on the speaker. There was a trailer with the speaker there that they could see and kick the tires, and somebody was there to talk about what the implementation of what the system would be for notification. So they have done some efforts to get the information out there, similar to like what the evacuation, the Zone Haven platform to know your zone kind of thing. It's also an education process.
I'd like to jump in here for a minute. So, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the education piece is not what I'm worried about. There's protocols in place with the county that I think is a bigger problem to tackle. And, I know, Julie, your voice isn't probably where you want it to be, but I want to support CWS in that you can't have a separate system from AtHoc Blackberry. And Chris and the gentleman, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the hardware involved between an LRAD talking speaker and the current siren is incompatible. Is that accurate? You can't add an LRAD speaker and have it work with your existing speaker system. Is that correct?
So, yes, but I will point out that, an LRAD system can be integrated with the general AtHoc system, much like the current vendor's siren system can. But it would be up to Julie to dictate what tones or voice would be allowed through it as part of the unified community warning system.
Okay, so that was a big misunderstanding on my part. I thought that the two hardware systems were not compatible. So if they are compatible,
the hardware systems themselves are not compatible, but AtHoc has the ability to integrate with LRAD in the same exact way we have with the existing hardware.
All right. So what I hear Sahalia and the group saying is in West County, they would like some sort of a warning system, either an additional AtHoc speaker or a talking speaker. They would like some sort of a warning tool added to the platform. And that's up to Sahalia and group, I guess, to figure out budgets as to what can be afforded or not afforded. But I just want to make sure that we support Julie and her team, that we are not adding another alert and warning system for them to have to manage, meaning she's going to use her AtHoc system and that's going to hit all speakers. Julie, I don't want to talk for you, but I don't know, maybe Captain McQuaid, you can jump in if Julie can't. I want you guys to express your concerns on adding another system.
Well, it definitely has to be under the county because we're talking about West Contra Costa County. I mean, the East Bay Hills, it's West Contra Costa County going all the way down to Berkeley, which already has the sirens, and then maybe Oakland in the future. But my questions are twofold for Julie and her team. Is number one, policy-wise, how do we go about it? Number two, in terms of engineering, what's the approach? How do we study, like, how many sirens are needed, what location, how much it costs? And in terms of the policy, how do we lobby for it? How do we get the budget? What are the steps involved?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My computer froze up and I missed most of the conversation. I just wanted to make sure I understood completely. Dan, if there were a problem today, anywhere in the county where we had a fire situation, how would the system currently work?
Well, I mean, that's going to depend on where specifically in the county it is, but at minimum, Julie's going to have the ability to send out WIA and various other tones using the AtHoc interface. Our user interface as an integration to all of those endpoint tools, many of which are mobile phone driven, right? So, so that's the general on that one.
Yeah. So, go ahead, Marilyn.
I just want to complete that answer with what's going on in the city of Richmond, because Dan, you earlier said, if the worst comes, we'll have police officers going there. My community in this part of West Contra Costa County, the majority are elderly. It's a bedroom community. They're like original owners from 40, 60 years ago. Evacuation is a major concern. It's on the back of the people all the time. That's the main reason why they sent me to the city council. Wildfire safety concerns, to be honest with you. They asked me to run because I worked on wildfire safety. The number of police officers, Matrix report was done a few months ago and said the city of Richmond needs 255 police officers. Guess how many we're budgeted for? 145. Guess how many we have in place? somewhere around 130 with the injuries and stuff. I would say 125. So we cannot count on that. It's a serious issue, and this city council is not going to increase the budget for police officers beyond 145. So I understand, I hope you understand the level of concern and anxiety and apprehension in this community. Sorry, Tony, go ahead.
I thought Marilyn had her hand up.
Right, and mine's a real simple question. I don't understand why the emphasis on using mobile phones for an opt-in system. You have to understand there's significant wrinkles in the geography here so that cell phones don't work in people's homes, or
Do
they
you
don't
have a
have cell
landline?
phones.
Do you have a
No.
landline? No.
No.
So I'm sorry. So part of our system is opt-in, but when we utilize our federal tools, it's not opt-in. So 85% of the phones that everyone now has are WIA and iPOS capable. So your phone is the one thing that can get a hold of you. When we utilize that tool as we would in a fire, we will be reaching you. And that's why there's so much of an emphasis. Trying to reach an elderly population by adding spoken word outside is not necessarily going to be our best approach. So the more we can reinforce WIA capable phones and getting people to engage with that, you don't have to sign up for the system to receive that. We want you to, so we can reach you by email, by other text message.
Well,
Does it
I guess
do not disturb mode?
No, we blast straight through do not disturb. It blasts through any focus mode you might have on it, and it is geographically targeting any cell phone within the area of the selected regions. So it's not specific to the person. This is a global technology that all cell phone manufacturers and all cellular carriers adhere to.
It overrides do not disturb, you said?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And it's not an opt-in. That's really important.
Correct.
And then the other aspect, though, that we're facing is, as I said, we have big black holes, and that's just the nature of the geography here. So it sounds like part of the emergency quality, you might say, notification quality, is based on increasing cell towers in those black hole areas. And I guess, Halo, we need to identify those.
So yeah, there's a number of issues as far as, cellular and technology and things like that. And as I previously mentioned, that was one of the downfalls of the Maui fire, was that, that was one tool of many. But, what's happened over the years is, as people have embraced cellular as a communication method, they've discontinued keeping their their landlines in their homes, right? I don't have a landline in my home. You said you don't, right? So, these are gaps, if you will, because one of the other tools is a physical phone call from the community warning system, to physical landlines in a geographic listed area. So moving away from that for the convenience of the cellular technology has opened that gap as well, right? And that's not anything that we can really address here in this committee at all, or this meeting, or anything. I mean, that's going to be a communication between your neighborhood and your cellular providers in the area. Because I mean, even with that, right, you've got a half a dozen different networks, cellular networks, that don't necessarily have crossover and interoperability. So I mean, that's something that's kind of outside of this. If you don't have a television antenna on the roof of your house, and if you have moved away from cable television so that you're now relying on streaming services, you could potentially end up in that same kind of a gap if your third-party internet provider is inoperative during an emergency, right? There's just a variety of these technology shifts that have occurred over the years, and we've tried very hard to keep up with that shift by introducing new tools, or embracing the old tools that have not been impacted So when we talk about, radio controlled sirens, right, they're not dependent on third-party internet provider. They're not dependent on cellular provider. They are straightforward, just, radio broadcast from battery backed up stations throughout the system. So, there is a certain amount of redundancy to that. I just wanted to kind of point out that, the shifts in technology do open up these types of gaps. And I think that we're all aware of that.
The other thing to point out is that radio, using NOAA radios, and then several of the other things. When we use WEA, it's not just cell phones. So it'll be the TV, NOAA radios, and our Lafayette has a radio station. These other avenues of communication are also could be active when we run into an emergency situation.
Yeah, good point. When the emergency alert system, which is part of this broadcasts, anybody with a weather radio is going to get that transmission as well in their homes. But you have to have a weather radio. You have to have it turned on. You have to have good batteries in your weather radio.
Well, one major concern is that a wildfire will be following a major earthquake, which has already knocked down the cell towers. And what are we going to do? Also, 20,000 people live just in El Sobrante Valley and many thousand more in El Cerrito. How many minutes does it take to reach those people by landline or cell phone?
So again, I'm not advocating for or against adding sirens in your geographic area, right?
Are we, sorry, Dan, I don't want to go. We is almost instant. So when we utilize our federal tool, it's almost instant to your cell phone. But I can tell you also that it's probably a bit like, in my purview, creating the focus to make sure that we have these capable devices is better in that situation that you're talking about than asking you to listen to a siren outside. Because if I need you to evacuate, I want you to look at this and then take action, not stop and listen. Does that make sense?
Yes, but the concern is that it wouldn't work. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I want to apologize to Tony because we interrupted Tony's questions with our questions, Marilyn and I. Tony, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was, Dan, that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to talk about what current gaps exist and what are possible solutions to those gaps that currently exist. So that's
right. I mean, CAER and we distributed, weather radios, same radios, if you will, back, probably more than a decade ago now, to various schools throughout the area to make sure that they had something to listen to when there was primarily a hazardous material release at the time. But it's still an important piece of technology today to have some kind of a radio that receives weather information, whether that information is coming from NOAA or whether that information is coming from EAS via community warning system. That's important stuff to have, especially if you're in a home where you're otherwise in a black hole of communication.
No, I understand that, but I was just talking, if there was a thinking about the situation, if there was a fire today, the tools we have available today to those people in that particular area are the tools that you mentioned, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so looking at those current tools, are there gaps that you see in the system that we need to correct to try and get this whole question answered? I'm not advocating for or against sirens. I'm
Sure. So I was actually going to open that up to Joe and Chris. As far as their technology of what they're proposing to put in is, do you support some method of tone alert radio that works on your technology that could be used indoor, as well as outdoor?
Yeah.
And I also unfortunately have to tell everybody that I have to drop. I have another meeting coming up at noon, so I've got to jump on that one there. But if there are any other questions that you need me to respond to, I'm open by email. Julie can ask me any questions that come up via email, and I can provide that, and she can provide it back to the group.
Thank you very much, Dan. That's why we're recording it, and I'll send the recording to everyone so you'll know what happened. But what I hear is that you guys are already doing an awesome job, but you're not close to the option of expanding it, right?
Absolutely not.
Great. Thank you. Okay, we'll let you go.
All right, thank you. Take care, everybody.
Chris?
Yep. Thanks, Dan. The answer is yes. So our system can notify as well in radios or additional stuff. We are also an IPAWS originator and disseminator, but if you already have the AtHoc tool, it's not necessary. But we do have capabilities for that, so we can fill in some gaps if there are. But one thing I did want to kind of mention is, and some of the, we've installed these speakers. We installed Laguna Beach. I use that as a good example. They installed 3 speakers for the city, and they needed about 25 to 30 of them just to cover the city. Now, the city's not very big, but when we put the first 3 in, it was for a tsunami, potential tsunami, because it's on the coastline. The citizens that lived by the speakers really enjoyed the fact that they had that as a they also have, the IPAWS certification. They also have other means for the notification by the cell phones and everything. But it was another level of tool in the toolbox to say, okay, I can see it. B, it's another way to get notified if I'm outside, if I don't have my phone, if something's going on, that they enjoyed it. In fact, it went so much that the city funded themselves to add another 20 more pieces, 20 more units around. And in fact, we added the last common council is that more people wanted more of them. So as you put them in, and then the citizens were realizing, well, I don't have one close enough to me. I want one closer. So it was a very good impact on the community of having that capability. And unfortunately, it was used twice. One was the Emerald Fire, and then the other was I think it was a coastal. I think it was a coastal fire. Used both, I think, in the same year in 2022. They didn't use all of them. In the Emerald Fire, they only used 3 speakers, but the capability for the city manager, not that the city manager was super happy, but the emergency coordinator activated the system from his mobile phone before he even got on site. So the fire chief called him up and said, we need to evacuate this small area. Can you do this quickly? And so that was.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to make sure we don't get off track. The county has a system in place already.
I understand.
And Julie and her team do a fantastic job. So Sahalia, what you have available to you today is you have the EVAC, the Genesis Zone Haven platform that Julie and her team use, in addition to the AtHoc Blackberry. So all of that stuff is in place for IPAWS, cell phone, all of that stuff. As long as a resident signs up on CWS, and as long as the agencies use the EVAC tool, they're going to get notifications a half a dozen ways. I think what you're asking, and I want to bring it back to the original reason for these meetings, Sohalia, is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're asking for some sort of an alert, either a siren or a talking speaker in West Contra Costa County. Is that really the objective?
Yes, the objective is to explore how it's going to be implemented by the county. How do we identify the need? How many we need? What location? I mean, engineering approach, policy approach, implementation. The houses around here are averaging around 1 million. So assuming a wildfire only doesn't cause any casualties, just property damage, the amount of investment we do in talking sirens or a new tone or whatever, it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, so because I have to jump off on another call myself, but I would say to this, if that's the overall objective, we heard from Dan, we heard from Chris, the 2 hardware components can talk to each other. I heard the Genesis talking speaker rep, and I heard the AtHoc Blackberry rep say that they could integrate somehow, some way. I would research that. If it's too difficult, then I don't know what it would take to do another siren, but I think it's very clear that everyone on the Fire Safe Council would like something. It's just a matter of what it is, how it works, who's going to pay for it, and who's going to monitor it, and does it
Joe,
fit into the
forgive me.
current policy?
Forgive me for interrupting.
Yeah.
I am not sure why we need this until we figure out what we're missing. So who is not getting notified? If it would not make sense, and I am more than happy for us to start to consider to grow and expand the CWS, but we would need to identify areas that people are not receiving alerts. It does not make sense to just put old technology out there just to have it.
Well, so I think when you say,
I want to know why
Yeah.
and where we need it.
Hey, Julie, when you say alerts, you're talking about somebody getting it through their phone. I think they're talking about some audible siren. And I know you made the comment like notifying elderly people through a siren indoors is not a good probably way to go, which I agree with. But I think what I'm hearing is they're looking for some sort of a sound device. Obviously, Berkeley triggered, maybe Berkeley's test triggered that. But my understanding is they're looking for some sort of a siren in the El Sobrante the north end of Wildcat Canyon is what I'm hearing. Correct me.
I can see that.
Yeah.
But I'm also saying why, because we're a solution looking for a problem right now, from my perspective.
Okay.
So I want us to drill down. We want to grow. We want to figure out how to best, because our goal is to make sure everybody's safe. But so where is our problem? What is the core issue we're trying to solve? I'm not looking for Berkeley has this new system. I want a tried and true, long enduring, and a definitive problem that we have to solve so that we can all work together and actually solve the problem. Does that make sense?
Yes, Julie, let me just raise 2 points. And then Marilyn, you can speak to 3 points actually. Number one, El Sobrante Valley has no siren for any purpose, evacuation shelter in place. Number two, in case of a major earthquake, when the cell towers are knocked down, we won't have anything. If I understand correctly, those talking sirens work by satellite phone and more reliable. So we can have that. Number three, we had some evacuation drills. There were people who did not receive it. There were people in like San Pablo receiving it when we were doing it in the Carriage Hills. So I'm not sure how CWS works. I trust what you say that it does it, but in practice, there is no guarantee. We haven't had a disaster. Hopefully we won't have any, but we would like to have maximum preparation. And we strongly feel like this investment is worth it, even if it only improves the overall system by say 0.1%. It's worth it. Marilyn, go ahead.
Thank you. And actually, I'm jumping on top of your points because the truth is the valley is set up in such a way we can't go and walk out on the street and see what's happening around the slope of a hill. And when we're really close to the Hayward Fault, and it just exits towards the bay on the other side of the South Ridge here, the Wildcat Ridge. And we have gas lines that basically parallel Highway 80. We already know that San Pablo Dam Road that crosses over for sure is going to be completely non-functional after a 7.4 earthquake. This area is going to be really cut off, and it actually needs information that can still get through in the absence of no power. Post-earthquake, you can't get out to the west, and the east is likely to be also completely taken out with landslides. That whole area of San Pablo Dam Road is unstable. So, with my background, that's why the speaker siren sounded like such a great solution, because even if people can't hear it in the house, a neighbor can hear it and walk next door and say, do you have water? And we have to have constant feedback to everybody that they can't start a fire. And, you know, I just see that the cell signal will collapse in that circumstance.
Let me add to that. I put on my background actually what with the Hayward fault, the major gas lines. There are many more lines in blue, and then the wildfire area, and it's actually more than that. On top of that, the state fire marshal has asked local agencies to identify communities with 50 dwellings or more with one evacuation exit route. Do we have many of them? Unfortunately, it doesn't say what to do. There is no budget. We have many communities, narrow evacuation routes that on a regular basis, even an ambulance cannot get into them. So there was a fire once in one of them, and it had to be put off by an airplane because of the very steep slope. Firefighters cannot get into it. So the evacuation process would be extremely slow. Add to that the age of the average residents that are very elderly. So concerns just pile up. And I hope you understand the concerns that there, by the way, there are no fire hydrants in unincorporated areas. We told the county fire marshal, Chief Buckman, but he has no solution for it. That's the way it is. It's the residents' responsibility, apparently, because there is no city to collect taxes for fire hydrants. So many concerns, and I'll be happy to give you a tour of the area.
I'd like to add that they told us the solution was to have a helicopter with a bucket pick up water at the San Pablo Dam Reservoir to hit those death row sections of El Sobrante. We have a lot of them. It's just this wrinkly geography with a lot of funny little canyons and 45-degree slopes, and you know, and we don't even have cameras that are pointing right now to find a fire before it starts spreading. So anyhow, I just think that's where the misunderstanding perhaps of why we are asking for this. It's because of this really challenging situation for us, you know, and earthquake, you know, the risk has gone up 30% for a major earthquake on the Hayward now.
Why do we think that the siren would survive a major earthquake in that area?
Say that again.
Marilyn, why you're talking about a major earthquake? What's the guarantee that any siren, no matter where it is, would be standing in the earthquake that you're talking about?
Well, we do have a lot of bedrock, so if it's located properly. The thing is the cell towers probably will lose power fairly quickly, even though I understand they have some of them now with solar battery backups. But we have no idea what the solar companies are doing. You know, that's part of our problem. We can't get any reliable information. And Julie, back to you're saying find a solution, finding a problem. I'd like to say maybe what we need to do is test these alert systems and find out why something that should go to Carriage Hills is ending up in San Pablo, which, by the way, is a few miles away.
Well, I can speak to you on that. What I'm meaning, Marilyn, by a solution for a problem is do we have identified areas specifically that are not receiving alerts where something like this would be beneficial, where people aren't receiving cell phone messages? There's a lot of overshoot that's built in the FEMA iPause tool to make sure that we are getting a hold of everybody. Also, additionally, when you opt into the CWS, you have your profile. So if you have signed up to receive alerts in a specific area, but then you move to another area, you may be living in San Pablo getting alerts all the way from Orinda. So there's a lot of variables going on. We have over 538,000 people in our system, and not everybody is in and up to date.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things. I just want to make sure we're being specific. I don't want us to be looking at you know, we need this thing that's gonna fix everything, because we all know, especially on emergency management, like there's no magic thing that's gonna fix everything. We have to make sure that we're being succinct and well thought out with how we're addressing the problem, and we're all clear on the problem that we're solving.
Yeah.
Good,
I
Julie.
I was just gonna say, I think it is worthwhile testing to see how effective CWS is. I think the FEMA test, by the way, was really valuable because of that. A lot of people did not get those FEMA alerts, or they didn't know that they had them until they were told to go look for them, which is kind of an interesting issue too. But I do worry about the failure in the face of earthquake where there'll be no cell. And everyone knows that is one of the characteristics of a major earthquake. The cell systems are gone. And if you put in a pole into bedrock, we actually have some really good stable bedrock around here. I bought a house on bedrock. So, you know, of course that made me get into wildfire danger. How was I to know? But anyhow, I'm just saying that redundancy is not an evil. I think redundancy is appropriate because we have multiple severe hazards in this entire East Bay.
I hear you, Merlin, and I agree, but I think Julie may have some issue with that. Does it add to your work if we do that? I mean, what's the issue? What's the main negative points about adding talking sirens?
It's not an issue. It's making sure that we're doing the work to address the areas that need to be addressed. So up until right now, I haven't heard of any pockets where we're not able to reach people.
Well, we haven't had a 7.4 earthquake either. I mean, that really is part of my big fear. Plus, we've seen what's happened in other areas where they did not do a redundancy. And,
well, so our system, and my apologies, our system, so the best way to approach alert and warning is with old and new technology. So redundancy is built into our system. CWS actually has 2 different systems. In addition to AtHoc Blackberry, we have Rave, which is the state system. So they back us up also. Our redundancy is your landline phone calls from reverse 911, text messages, phone calls to your cell phone, via iPause, alert or broadcast warning, as well as we have NOAA weather radios. So sirens specific to where we're at now have only ever been used shelter in place due to hazmat. So that's what I'm saying. It's not I would be excited to grow this system. I just want to make sure we're being very careful about what it is that we're doing and how we're approaching it.
That's a good point, Julie. Let me bring up one more concern. In case of a major earthquake, East Bay Mud, for example, says you need to have water for 10 days minimum. Assume there's no power, no water, nothing. Having those talking sirens installed with current technology that addresses Tony's concern that they last, and communicating with satellite phone rather than cell phone, which may not work. People's cell phones are already out of battery. They don't have power. It's a good way of communicating with people, letting them know what's available, where to go for help. It can, during those 10 days, maybe more. I mean, a major earthquake in our area is disastrous. Our fire stations are not seismically retrofitted. So you can imagine that we may not even have firefighters. Fire engines may be trapped and not get inside. So communication is a major concern for us. And during that period of time, talking sirens would be vital.
Actually, I don't think we have a radio tower at our local fire station, so they can pick up signals from the main Richmond Office of Emergency Services, correct? And we'll be cut off is what it is. 24,000 people will be cut off.
I think a lot more people would be cut off if you're talking about a 7.4 earthquake.
Yeah.
I think I saw Rebecca had a question, or Michelle sent out a little text. I think we should be testing the system, number one. Number two, we should be encouraging every citizen in that area to sign up to get the information. I think part of the problem when we built the warning system, we knew that the problem was always going to be educating the people and keep them educated. So we need to test the system. We need to sign up all the people in that area and then understand where the gaps are and then develop a plan to try and take care of those gaps. Now, you know, I'll say one other thing, because there was some talk from Joya about, John Joya about, well, if people hear sirens and they're going to shelter in place, the people in the central Richmond where the sirens are located are not going to hear a siren up in El Sobrante. Okay, that's just not going to happen. And because they don't hear the sirens in central Richmond if there's a shelter in place. So you know, sirens are different. Okay. So I don't buy the fact that, well, people get confused. I don't buy that at all. But let's try and understand where the problem exists. Let's do a test. Let's get everybody signed up. Let's identify what the concerns are, and then let's go from there.
I know we are over time. I always finish everything on time. If everyone has 5 more minutes, if I can ask, please. Suppose we agree on having talking sirens. I would like to know the steps. So in parallel, we work on different options. Leave our options open to expedite the process if we end up having sirens. So my first question for Chris, if you could answer quickly, can we have a tone that penetrates through walls in addition to talking?
With sound, it's every time you go through a wall, you lose about 10 dB. So you just have to measure like how far the distance is and what kind of coverage it's going to get. And I know Dan mentioned earlier that the outdoor sirens is designed for outdoors. So we should be cognizant of that. But if you are going to try to hear it inside, you're going to lose 10 dB trying to go through a wall. So
isn't there a limit on the dBs that can be heard?
Yeah. So that's another concern, of course, is from the speaker itself. You don't want to be over 123 dB for more than 4 minutes. So you don't want to have a longer tone duration. The existing sirens that are probably in the county are probably right around 121 dB is my guess. They're under the threshold. But yeah, so we'd have to be careful on, you know, the distance, and you'd have to plot it out on coverage from that. Not the best, not the easiest answer, but that's kind of the general gist of it. So.
Julie, if I may ask, if you still can use your voice, please. What, suppose that everybody agrees that it's a good solution. We should have it, even if it has redundancy. What are the steps to be taken in terms of policy and implementation?
You know, I'm not sure. I would really need to see a sound study to evaluate. And then I would have to figure out what was going on. Like, I would have to do more research to figure out.
Thank you. Who does this sound study? Anybody here knows?
I don't know.
Chris, go ahead.
We can provide a preliminary like design and what the sound would cover, you know, like basically a sound study on putting some speakers out at certain locations where the dB would be, where it would end for the coverage.
That's free, I hope.
Yeah, we can do that for free.
Well,
hey, why don't you do it?
We can.
Awesome. So what do you expect out of that study, Julie?
Really, I can't really commit to anything right now. I would have to see. I don't have all the data. I'm still trying to just figure out what the core issue is and how we can help.
Okay. Thank you very much. So everyone here, what are the next steps? Tony, what do you suggest?
Well, do we agree that the first step should be a test? the current system to see, what areas or how the people react to it, or do we have people signed up? Do the people get the message? Now you can do a dual track. You can also, Julie's going to do some research and, but you asked the question about funding. The way we funded the warning system is we went to industry to get the funds to build the system. There were no tax dollars involved in that process. So if we're looking for money, we've got to find another revenue source, because you're not going to go back to industry. They're paying for the current update of the system, and they paid for the initial system, and that was like a $5 million investment at that time. And then if we were gonna go and look at putting in sirens, then we want to look at a number of different vendors. We wouldn't just go with one particular vendor, but certainly the vendors that may be on now can certainly bid if we went out to bid on it. But there's a whole process that we'd have to use. And I don't have a problem looking at dual tracks, but I think my suggestion would be, let's get that test going ASAP so we really understand what the limitations are. And at the same track, we can talk about, are there other funding mechanisms that can be utilized to purchase sirens if that's the way we go? Because we're probably talking somewhere in the area of $50,000+ for sirens. I know when we initially built them, they were $30,000-$40,000. I'm sure it's much higher now, maybe as high as $70,000-$75,000. I don't know.
Another thing that needs to be evaluated is what the robustness of the local cell system is. I mean, if you're going to rely on the cell system that heavily, for all we know, it may be well worth investing and negotiating with the cell infrastructure companies to add more solar batteries, to add more towers. I happen to know they've been taking down some towers rather than maintain them. But I think part of that is because they're planning to build new ones and expand networks. Because like I said, there's plenty of black holes around here.
Thanks. James just answered your question and put it in the chat. If you look at it, you see the dead cell zones. It's very informative, very interesting, and a little scary around Hayward Fault. So, Tony, I wonder if we, in addition to what you suggested, running in parallel a test and research to identify limitations and funding mechanism, can we ask Genesis to do their sound study, or would it deprive them from participating in a bid in the future?
Yeah, I don't know. The way we did it was a little different. We identified what the problem was, and then we looked at vendors and had vendors from different places give us their comments on how they would solve that problem. So
got it. I understand now. Thank you. So let's go with a test and research and understanding limitations, while we also look at possibilities of grants and funding mechanisms. So Julie, when do you think the next meeting should be?
Well, let me suggest that there's some research that has to be done, right? So why don't we do this? We can either have Julie and I can talk about, how her research is going. I could do some research looking at funding mechanisms if that's the way we want to go. But let's not rush into this. Let's make sure we give it enough time to develop a plan. So I don't know if we can answer that right now, but I think if offline, if we talk, we could probably set up a meeting, in the near future.
Excellent. Why don't you talk with Julie and then let us know, and we'll set up the next meeting, hopefully sometime towards end of January or so.
Yeah, it gives us a little bit of time to to develop the plan. You know, the plan should be to the test. That means our council needs some work to do with the community to make sure they're signed up. We get as many people signed up as possible. Maybe we can send out a flyer to those people in that area saying, you know, it's important that you sign up and get that thing moving. So we can do a couple of things in different phases.
Excellent. That may take longer, but definitely worth it. Okay, then let us know. And once you let us know, Tony will organize the next meeting.
I want to make sure that the council supports that effort. And Marilyn's on, and we have Rebecca and some of the other folks that are on. Is that seem logical to go that route?
At this point, I foresee a campaign on our local next door, getting people to report all the dead cell zones, because I know our area is really, really bad, but it's not reported on this cell phone map that James just gave us, which is a very cool tool. So maybe we can get some data out of that. By the way, one of the things that's a big problem here is we are a news desert. We are an official news desert, and Richmond side will be opening up in a few months. So this could really be a giant thing for all kinds of emergency preparedness efforts. We'll finally have some sort of public, reliable source of news.
Thank you. So while you work on that side, I hear from Marilyn that the community works on their own side of identifying limitations, and we'll be in touch. Anything you would like to add, Julie? Sorry about it. Okay. Anything else, Tony?
No, I don't have anything unless somebody else does.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to thank the group for gathering today, and just to reinforce that the wildfire mitigation program, part of my role as the county coordinator, is to meet with small groups of individuals, neighbors, residents, at-risk communities. And so with every meeting, I reinforce the CWS registration process. We, with the support of Chief Bachman, have printed up QR codes onto postcards, which are distributed widely. And I will be at the OES meetings tonight, tomorrow night, and Wednesday night to provide a resource to community members, residents that are interested in the hazard mitigation plan and that update process. So I look forward to supporting the process further. And if anyone needs to reach me, Sohila has all of my contact information.
Thank you very much, Michelle.
Sorry, I just have one thing to address. You might want to take a look at investigating some of the county purchasing protocols and policies and how those work, and if submitting a sound study survey would eliminate you from a bidding process of something moving forward. You might want to keep that in mind. And I'm not 100% familiar with the solicitation process for projects.
I'm sorry, I have difficulty understanding. If you speak a bit slower, that's easier to understand. My apology.
Yeah, it was just for Mr. Roller, and it was just letting them know that if he's going to do a sound study, he may want to take a look at purchasing policies for the county and the protocols that exist there, because if he may inadvertently, and I'm not saying he does or doesn't, I'm saying if he participates in some sort of research, he may inadvertently remove himself from the ability to solicit on a program.
Thank you very much.
I want to warn him that, you know, if, and again, an independent third party ideally would be the best person to evaluate anything, not suggesting your Genesis isn't, just saying, hey, somebody that's not involved as a vendor might be the appropriate person to go to. And again, I didn't want him to agree to doing something or participate in something that would eliminate him from bidding on a project moving forward if he got that.
Thank you for that. I'll definitely take that in consideration. Obviously, I'm part of a company that wants to sell something, so I would love to help, but if I can't participate in the tender, then it would be difficult for me I would be jeopardizing myself. So I'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. And sorry our meeting went over time, and I really want to say thank you for your time. Very good meeting, very informative. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tony. Well, I don't want to name everyone. I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Let us know about the time for next meeting. Have a good day and hope you get your voice back soon, Julie. Bye.
Bye-bye. Good information.
Yes, indeed.